Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, my dear students. Our current session focuses on variables and variants. I hope and expect by the end of this session you would be able to understand each of these terms, and you would also understand how do they differ from each other. Well, my dear students, to understand the concepts at the very outset of the session, I would like you to understand this through the example that I am going to give to you. This is an example of some friends, for example, who are spending an evening together and they are sitting in Bequia Island, that is in St Vincent, and they have just gathered there to watch some video, some movie, and probably to have some drink. Now let us suppose that one of the persons just lifted the glass and said, "Cheers," to which another person replied, "Chairs and tables." Now, why is this confusion created? Why there is a shift from cheers to chairs and tables? The problem was with the pronunciation of the first person, who instead of pronouncing cheers, ears, pronounced it as chairs, that is ears. This difference in the sound created the problem in understanding. Actually, these are both the ways in which people pronounce this word cheers in Bequia. Actually, what we are talking about here is the variable, and I am defining the variable here, the feature that varies. So what is a variable? A variable is a feature that varies. And in this case, what is the feature that varies? That is the vowel. The different variants at play in the community at large are actually realisations of the diphthong with a closer starting point, like ears, for example, in cheers, or like ears as in chairs. So, to understand the difference between the two, the variable and the variant, the variable is what varies. But this is an abstract concept. This is a notion that is not concrete. Whereas variant is the actualization or the realization of this, a variable. So realization of a variable is called a variant. Well, there are certain ways to identify a variable. I am going to share two ways of that. One is to write a variable in parentheses for yourself, for example, the word ear. Now, by using, Wells 1982, system of key for pronunciations, probably you can try to pronounce the word, and you would realize you can pronounce it in two ways, ear or ear. So, this is actually the differentiation between the near vowel or the near lexical set. My dear students, another concept that is important for you to understand is regular versus probabilistic alternations between variants. Well, the relationship between the abstract concept of a variable and its concrete realization in actual, use is a variant, and to understand this concept we can relate it to another concept or compare it with another concept, that is of a phoneme and the actual phonic realization of the phoneme. The sound represented orthographically, if you look at the screen, as P, the English letter, it has very different realizations in different situations. I would give you a few examples. For example, if you look at the screen again, you would find a word that you can see here, pinch, p. The aspirated sound. Whenever this orthographically represented as P, the sound P, whenever it occurs at the beginning of a word in English, it is aspirated most of the times, P. With a burst of air, it comes out of the mouth. Now, this variation is quite predictable, and it depends entirely on the immediate linguistic context in which it occurs. There are, certain other examples that would help you understand. For example, how do you express the concept die or dead? How many different ways can you think of expressing the idea if somebody has died? Maybe die, dead, death, etc. What determines your use of these different ways of phrasing it? He has died, he is dead, his death has taken place. Now, all these choices, what are they dependent upon? They are dependent upon the context, the sociolinguistic context in which, you would make a choice. Now, I would also like you to think of at least one word or set of words that you sometimes pronounce differently in different ways, as I gave you the example of cheers and chairs. By the way, I would just give you another example of here and here. So, when, for example, sometimes you pronounce here, you would notice another variety where people would pronounce it as here. Come here, come here. And in fact, in all these choices that are made, whether they are in the first case of the example of the syntactic structures of, when I was talking about somebody's death, or in case of pronunciation, the different variables in terms of pronunciation, when you're talking about all these are all the choices that are made in a context. They do not happen or take place in isolation. And there are certain social factors that play a role in that. Actually, the realization of all these choices of varieties, then these are called variants. And this concept, of variant is different from a variable because it is the concrete concept that is the actual performance of, the process of doing it.